All right, we are doing something very different today. We are about 45 miles from our Classic Motorsports workshop. We are talking to Patty Schwarze, and Patty is a longtime friend of ours, and she collects cars. Now, a lot of our friends collect cars, but her collection is, let's just say she's a bit small-minded in her collecting habits.
Okay.
Patty loves microcars and old vintage motorcycles. Well, Patty, let's start with how and why did this, shall I say, obsession start?
They multiply, as we just talked about. I started with French 2CVs.
Okay.
And I fell in love with them when I was in school in Europe. But my family was not car oriented. I just loved the little cars. And somehow or other, they just multiplied. And they didn't stick strictly to French. I loved the French cars, but then I started looking at Delahaye's and Tobolagos and went, well, I can't do that. And
A little rich for your blood?
a little rich and just seemed a little too esoteric. Couldn't quite get there. But the little cars just kept showing up, and I love them. So here you have it.
Well, you can fit a lot more of these in your garage than a Tabolago.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And then I ran out of room, so then I started squeezing the little scooters in.
So microcars are known to be, shall we say, quirky, and I've owned a few, so I'm not immune to the syndrome. But and some of them are considered not quite fully developed. Is there a mainstream or really good quality, good driving microcar?
Well, it depends on
your definition.
If you ask the Italians, it's going to be a Fiat.
Yeah.
If you ask the French, it's going to be a deux chevaux. If you ask the Germans, then you're going to get into a lot more choices, shall we say. One of the most popular of the German microcars was the Gogo Mobile.
Okay.
And the Gogo Mobile, they did 3 different motor sizes. The big block, which was for export, was 400 cc's.
Oh, big block, yeah.
Big block. The microcars evolved post-World War II. You had a group of people, you had consumers, shall we say,
Most of the people,
who were dying to get their families on the road again. And they had no money. And you had factories with a trained workforce, but they couldn't build planes, and they couldn't build any military armaments anymore. So you've got the manpower, you've got a few resources left, you've got a group of consumers, but what do we do with them? So each culture, meaning the European post-war cultures, came up with their own little interpretation of what will work. And it's fun. You read the manuals, and the Germans are telling you, put it here. You want to be...
That's the way Germans are.
Absolutely a turn and a half from this position. And the Italians are like, well, if it's working here, you're okay. And the French, oh my gosh, the French wired every car with all brown wire. When I got the Panard, it had brown wire only.
Brown's a nice color.
Brown was a good color, It's so it's very cultural, and it really was about getting people on the road.
So it was basically scooters and bicycles are very popular in Europe. So this was a step up from.
You want to take the family.
Yeah, so it was a step up from a cycle of one type or another, and it all ended. In the early 60s, I guess the Mini, probably more than anything, kind of killed off the microcar because it was a more fully developed, more practical version of a micro. It was a mini car, not a microcar,
right.
But it kind of, that and a couple other cars kind of ended it, didn't they?
Mini, Fiat, when Italy brought the Fiat out of strictly Italy and they started producing it in Spain, you got the Fiat, so that was the end of the PTV.
Okay.
Which had a very short lifespan.
All right.
For good reason. It's really quite the clown car of the collection. But as you got more reliable cars, the 2CVs hung in there forever. The only thing that really ended the life of the 2CV was emission control.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have enough horsepower to add emission control onto that boxer, simple motor. It's what a lot of people drove, and you had a lot of ideas, I can do it better. I mean, most everybody knows about an Isetta. Thank you to Urkel.
Yeah.
You know, and that whole, he drove an Isetta, everybody got to know an Isetta. So then you have a spin-off from that, which is the Heinkel that's here behind us, where Heinkel had been, of course, making planes.
Yeah.
And he thought he could do it better. Rather than put a frame under it, he rolled the tubing like you would with an aircraft to get a lighter bodied car.
Okay.
So everybody sort of had this idea that you've got all these factories and a lot of designers. So they thought, well, I can do this.
We're going to show you around the collection, and Patty's going to explain to us a little bit about each car, and then we're going to pick one and go out for a ride. All right, we're going to start with this Panard. It's a French car. Tell us a little bit more about it.
French car, 2-cylinder, 850cc. This has the Tiger motor in it, which was the more powerful of the motors. They race these things under the mark of Deutsche Banner.
Okay, yes.
All hand-built aluminum trim, 2-cylinder roller bearing crank. This car is good for about 65, 70 miles an hour down the road.
Yeah.
I panic at that and start coming back off the accelerator.
But this is not really a microcar. This is actually a pretty big car.
Yeah, but think about the power.
Yeah, okay.
Think about
Micro power, bigger body.
It's microcar enthusiasts will say 500 cc's or smaller.
Okay.
The mini cars fall into the category of 1,000 cc's or smaller. So there's some overlay there.
All right.
But the cabriolets were very, very rare.
Oh, yeah.
These cars never, I don't think, sold all that well. Panard made tanks during the war.
Yeah.
And they had been making they were the first export automobile in the world.
Oh.
In the late 1800s.
That's right.
But they came back, they made tanks during the war, they came back, had no money. And so they couldn't innovate in the way some of the other manufacturers did. Citroën ultimately bought Panard and phased it out.
Okay.
The Multipla, everybody loves the Multipla. This is the guys love the Multipla. And it got the nickname the short butts. And you really can't tell whether you're coming or going in this car.
But you could argue this is the first minivan.
This Fiat will tell you there's no argument that this is the first minivan. Seats lay down flat inside. This was the utility model. It's geared so that it goes very slowly, but it gets you there. It does. It's fun to drive. It's kind of a giggle. A big cult following in this vehicle, and they just went nuts in price for reasons that I don't really understand.
Yeah.
But
they're pretty valuable at auction today.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you estimate the value today on something like this?
I don't know. At least 40.
Yeah. And this seats 6 people, right?
Well, if they're small Italians.
Yeah.
This was really considered a family van, but it's a work van. The back seat lays flat.
Okay.
We went to a Clemson design workshop, and the young students were all excited because they'd come up with this idea for a modern van that would be multi-purpose, and the seat would lay flat and back. I'm thinking, oh, okay.
What a crazy new idea.
New idea.
And there's no access through the back. There's no hatch or anything, though.
No.
But it's got pretty big doors on the side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the
And
doors
you
on
can
both
see
sides.
how they're hinged.
Yeah.
That the front and back doors hinge on one set of hinges.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Saves money.
Yeah, interesting design idea.
Yeah. And this is the Heinkel that you were talking about.
This is the Heinkel, and here is again, we were talking about this is similar to an Isetta. You have this front opening door. Of course, with the Isettas, they had patented the steering wheel coming out with the door. It does not do that in this car. It is fixed. And then we were talking about this rolled tubing frame, and that's what you have here. Very lightweight.
Very nice construction.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice construction. The Heinkel had a proprietary motor and transmission that was not the greatest. But
Carefully said.
yeah. But it was his interpretation, and they sold. This is a German 4-wheel model. They made a very limited number of these and really made a very limited number of Heinkels. and then shipped the construction. They shipped components initially to Ireland. It was a fiasco, and ultimately wound up in the UK manufacturing a three-wheel version called a Trojan. And the Trojan and the Heinkels are pretty much interchangeable.
So a lot of these microcars were three-wheel instead of four-wheel. Did that have to do with cost, or it had to do, I think there was some taxation.
Taxation and licensing.
Right. It was cheaper. It was considered more a motorcycle than a car if it had three wheels.
Exactly.
So not exactly a great reason to leave a wheel off your car, but okay. Is it okay if I sit in this? I want to show our viewers what one of these cars looks like with a 6-foot tall, 225-pound man in it.
Go for it.
You ready for this, Chris? And I'm trying to do it delicately.
The epitome of grace. That's what you have to do, is just kind of get in and do the little shimmy shimmy. They considered it, when they marketed it originally, it was a 4-passenger automobile.
Yeah.
I knew you'd like that.
That's when you could say anything in your advertising, right? Honestly, it's very comfortable. It's obviously you have a lot of view.
Emergency exit.
Okay.
In the event that someone ran into the front of you.
I think if somebody runs into the front of you, you've got bigger problems.
Or you ran it into a tree or a ditch and
Again,
you couldn't get out.
Bigger problems. And I'm sure here in Florida, with no air conditioning and all this glass, this is just...
Well, it's a greenhouse.
Yeah.
But this is plexiglass, and it was done that way originally. Keep the weight light.
Yeah.
Plexiglass was a fairly modern idea, but it was, again, from the aircraft technology. Now comes the challenging part. If you hook your elbow right here, you will just...
All right.
There you go.
I'm trying to be very gentle with your car, too. All right.
Okay, your grace points were not high there.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that every time I drive to Publix for groceries.
Well, you know, you take these out, and you're swarmed with people.
Yeah.
And it's a little intimidating in here because it does feel like you're in a bubble.
Yeah.
And people are all around you, and it can be.
All right, let's keep going.
All right.
So these are both Messerschmitts.
Yes.
Quite famous. If there's, for microcars, these are some of the most famous.
They're two-stroke, 198 cc's, again, detuned from 201 cc's for tax purposes.
Okay.
You find that with quite a bit of this. And Tim, you've got the handle on your side. If you want to open this bubble, just to show people how you get in and out of it, you've got it. And grunt it on up. So
spacious seating.
Passenger is behind the driver.
But I'm assuming they're thinking 2 passengers in there.
Yes, of course. It's the family automobile. Come on. Nobody has multiple vehicles.
So you keep talking about four-stroke versus 2-stroke.
Yes.
Most microcars are 2-stroke, and that's not because it was eco-friendly. It was because that's
what was available.
That's what was, because it's a lot of bike engines then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
Now, if you read the owner's manual for the Messerschmitt, it will tell you that if it overheats, pull off to the side of the road and, quote, have a cigarette. Which is one of my favorites. I really like that. And there are many photos of people standing on the side of the road having a cigarette.
And you've got both a roadster version and a bubble top version.
Exactly.
Again, the perfect answer for Florida sun. You can tell these things were designed in a culture
cooler climate.
In a
much cooler climate.
Yeah.
But the bubbles are iconic.
Yeah.
I've had the sport version for quite a while. This is a relatively new toy.
And now we have the infamous Goggomobil.
Goggomobil.
I love the taillights on this one.
Oh, the design on this is pretty radical for the Germans, really. This car I had redone, had single stage paint put on it, still has a little bit of orange peel in it.
Oh, that's the way it was.
Keep it period correct.
Yeah.
But the German interior was just this
Drab.
gray thing that I just couldn't put back in. The car was too funky and fun, so I
love it.
put the customized interior in it.
Very nicely done.
The next custodian can go back to German they'd like.
Yeah.
You'll notice there's a coil for each piston.
The whole pre-mix idea, or the oil injection, that didn't start till quite a bit later.
Well, this is a 58.
Right. What I'm saying is, you had to mix oil in all these two-stroke cars.
Yes.
There was no oil tank where
Well, you know,
it mixed itself?
there were pumps
Okay.
that you could pull up to that would have a mixture.
Oh, pre-mix, oh, you
Yeah,
could buy
that
it? So there was enough of these on the road that you had gas stations, or petrol stations perhaps, in at least England, and benzene.
Right.
And so they had a dedicated pump just for this kind of car. And they
Yeah.
all took roughly the same ratio?
Roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, very cool.
And you can, you know, as with any hobbyist and cars, you can get into the oil argument until you're blue in the face.
Yeah, blue,
Yeah.
blue
Yeah,
smoke.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, so this, perhaps you might think this wraps up the collection in this building, but no, there's more buildings. All right, so this is your outside collection. No, you've moved these outside.
I've moved these outside so we can move around.
Okay. So you've got them packed in there.
Yeah.
So you could almost say this is a very iconic lineup of probably the most common, if you will.
Well, of course the 2CVs, they're common.
Yeah.
This particular BMW, it's a 700. It's a 61 Cabriolet. That's a very rare car.
Yeah, it's a very iconic car, though.
Yes.
In this world, at least.
Yeah. So, the 2CV is two-cylinder. BMW is two-cylinder.
Four-stroke on the BMW.
Four-stroke on the 2CVs.
Okay.
And then you've got a BMW 600 over here. Now, we were talking earlier about the Isetta, and this also was considered. They referred to it as the limousine.
Yes, I look at it, and my first thought is limousine.
Limo,
yeah.
Exactly. But this has the telescoping steering wheel, but wait, it has two doors.
Oh. Does it come with a doorman, or do you have to supply your own?
You have to supply your own. But in keeping with the multi-use idea, the back seat lays flat. I suppose somebody could have slept in them. But it was, again, the idea that you were going to take the family. But these came out, they were made for just 2 years. They didn't make a lot of them. They came out, I think, 58, 59. There's just too much other competition coming into the market. So they weren't very popular. But this is four-stroke, two-cylinder. It's very much like a BMW motorcycle motor in both of these BMW.
BMW did not design this car. They bought this. We need to talk about that a little bit, right?
From an Italian refrigerator manufacturer.
Okay, you snobby BMW people, keep that in mind next time you're tootling around.
You might want to edit that.
Yeah.
No.
I'm one of those snobby BMW people.
Yeah, I've got some too. But yeah, that was, and that when you think about that, when you think about Revolta, Isa Revolta, and the whole refrigerator idea, that makes a whole lot more sense.
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
At this door.
Of course, my refrigerator's bigger than this car.
Oh, somewhere to keep that beer.
Yeah.
But it was just another idea. And the big joke is, well, I've got an airbag. You know, you can see in the door is your spare tire.
Yeah.
It was an economy of space. But yeah, refrigerator.
And then the 700 replaced this car.
And the 700.
And was designed by BMW, and they were done.
Actually, this was Nicolati.
Okay. Well, I mean, but it was not bought from another company.
Right,
Yeah.
no, it was designed for them, but a well-known Italian designer, actually.
All right.
And they consider the 700 the car that saved BMW because they had gone bankrupt producing the Isetta. And
Who would have thought that buying a weird little car from an Italian refrigerator company, they actually made a lot of money selling them. Well, they sold a lot. They didn't make a lot of money on them. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, this one is the Spanish member of the collection.
Yeah, and at first I thought it was just a quick look at it, I thought it was a Crossley. It looks a little bit like a Crossley.
A little bit like a Crossley. But this was made in Spain. I think they made 1,100 of them. It's a 250cc two-stroke. Again, a proprietary motor for PTV. This company actually still exists today, and they make heavy equipment. And it is still in the family, and the gentleman who is the heir of one of the original founders is instrumental in keeping this group alive.
So you're suggesting this is not heavy equipment?
No.
But it looks like this has a real trunk in the front.
Well, it has a gas tank.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course.
No, yeah, you've got
Okay, so no trunk.
no trunk. No, you have your spare tire, gas tank, and battery here. But,
So this 2 Chevaux or 2CV is the car that got you started?
I actually have one other ahead of it
Okay.
prior to this, but it was so full of rust that this one came along, and it had been purchased and imported by a pair of attorneys, and they thought they were getting a real car. And they got it and were absolutely shell-shocked. And so,
Speaking of BMWs, they decided it was less than their new BMW?
yeah, I guess. So I wound up with this car a very long time ago. And it still has relatively few miles on it, although I do drive the wheels off of it a lot.
So they made we talked a little bit about this earlier, but they made these deep into the 80s or even?
This was one of the last cars made.
Yeah,
it was actually produced in Portugal, and this was 1990.
Yeah.
It was the last year of production.
Okay. So it's a fairly modern car, not?
Well, yeah, right. By the standards of everything else around here.
But these seats didn't come in it.
Well, they came in a Porsche.
Yeah, that's I thought I recognized them.
Oh, they're very comfortable.
Yeah.
This car is a dream to drive. It's easy, it's fun. Everyone talks about Citroën, and they may know the bigger cars that have the hydraulic suspension.
DSM and that type of stuff.
Yeah, the DS's, ID19s. But the 2CVs were designed for farmers, and the idea was that you were going to get the French peasantry to give up their horses. And so you had to keep the displacement low so taxation would be low. And you had to give them something strong that they could run around the farm on. But the idea, they have a special shock system in them. So
It'll go anywhere, won't it?
It will go anywhere, and it's very smooth. But you can see, you can just rock it back and forth. But the whole idea, the famous line was you had to be able to put a basket of eggs in the back seat and go across a freshly plowed field and not break an egg.
Nice.
And you had to be able to put 2 French farmers in wooden shoes in the front seat. So they're pretty spacious.
So I think of this car, I don't remember which James Bond movie it was, but it kind of rolled down the hill and they kept going in it.
And it kept going?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've never actually rolled them down the hill. I had one on a bank in Daytona.
Okay.
And I was trying to stay up on the bank, on the track, and I thought, this is going to be it. I'm finally going to succeed in rolling the car. And no, it just worked its way down.
Yeah, it just slid down the hill. All right.
Okay.
So we're in yet another building full of silly little cars.
Careful.
Fun little cars. This is a Japanese microcar. It is quite famous among Japanese car enthusiasts.
It is. Malcolm Brickell brought him here to the United States. It's a Subaru 360. They called them key cars, and it again had to do with parking and licensure in Japan. If you kept that horsepower or that motor size down, then you didn't need special permission to drive it. And so your permits were less, or it was just a more economical way to drive around Japan. This was the first Subaru for all you modern Subaru enthusiasts. And it's 2-stroke, 360 cc's. The people that love these things absolutely love them. This particular car, we have a love-hate relationship. I can't seem to keep this car running. I'm sure it's just that it needs more love and attention that it's gotten. There are a lot of other things that seem to keep cropping up ahead of it. But it's a good example. It's complete. It is, at the time that it was brought into the United States, it was considered the most unsafe car to ever grace the roads of the United States by Consumer Report.
Quite an auspicious award. So Subaru, or I should say, whereas in Europe the microcars petered out in the early 60s, that's absolutely not the case in Japan, because this is a newer car than that.
This was a 68.
Yeah, and even today, or at least into the late 90s, these key cars, which is kind of their way of saying microcar, are still quite prevalent, aren't they?
They are still making
Yeah,
some
okay.
that still fall under the category of key cars.
Yes.
They have a larger motor in them now, and I don't really know what the current rules and regulations
right.
are.
But it certainly did not go away like it did in Europe in the early 60s.
But if you think about, okay, 1968, think about the Cadillacs and the fins on the Cadillacs and the American metal. And Malcolm Brickell thinks he's going to sell these in the United States. There were stories of them, whether they are true or not, there seems to be a lot of argument about this, of them dumping these cars into the ocean because no one would take them. They gave them away as kind of door prizes or
well, you're competing against the
incentives.
air-cooled Beetle, and that's a pretty
Exactly.
iconic, good car.
Exactly. I mean, there was just very little incentive to get this car.
Yeah. And, you know, we were talking earlier about the Mini kind of wiping out the microcars, but certainly the Volkswagen Beetle did its part to hasten their demise.
Well, the advertising slogan for this was cheap and ugly. That was from the
Truth in advertising.
Over here we have the truck version of the 2CV that you saw outside. So again, has the 602cc motor, 2-cylinder air-cooled, an incredibly practical vehicle, other than the fact that you have this huge wind resistance up here. So you often find them with some sort of airfoil of some sort.
Homemade mostly?
Generally, yeah. But so practical, it's cavernous. You can put all kinds of things in there. And if you don't have to get them there fast, you're good. And it'll do 60, 65 down the road. Now, the more you put in it, the slower it'll go.
I think a lot of these cars, it's not so much what it will do is what you dare to do, right? What it will do and what you care to do could be different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Nissan Figaro. This is a car that was done, it's gotten a lot of publicity. They've come into the United States in a big way. They made about 20,000 of them. It was a design challenge for a group of designers at Nissan. It was built on a Nissan micro platform. So it was a production car that they custom bodied.
Very cool. And this is a newer car too. This is in the
91.
Yeah.
91.
Yeah.
So it's the first ever use of a commercial CD player. And if you remember the early CD players, you can get like half a tune out of it and then it skips and slides and nothing else ever happens again. But that's one of its claims to fame. And the other thing is that it's quite fun to park it and have people guess what year it is.
Yeah, because it's kind of a retro styling, and that's on purpose.
And the design team will tell you that what they did is they took little bits and pieces of the MG and the Fiat and the 2CV, and so depending on what car people are familiar with, that's what they see in this car. It's pretty clever.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
so we're back in Italy.
We've been traveling quite a bit this morning.
This is a Autobianchi Bianchina transformable. The name is longer than the car.
Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
Built on a Fiat 500 platform, and this was a collaboration between Fiat and Pirelli and Bianchina, or Bianchi, who were bicycle manufacturers. And they wanted to come up with a ladies' car, something that would appeal to the women. And this is what they came up with. So the top opens much like the 2CV. Oh, it's clipped, sorry. But it's a fun little car to drive. And again, it's a Fiat 500 underneath, so parts are available for this one. The fact that there are a few custom items about it, which makes it a little more challenging. But overall, this one is standard Fiat 500.
And they made millions of Fiat 500s, 600s, even 800s, yeah.
And then this is an earlier 2CV. This is a 63 that I rallied from Liège to Brescia and back to Liège,
That must have
years
taken
ago.
about 6 months.
It took a week, and I thought it was going to kill us. We went across the Brenner and the Stelvio and the Gavia, all those passes that they've named all those high-performance cars.
Yeah.
We took this thing over, doing an incredible navigation challenge rally at the same time. Jeff Lane did this, and when I asked Jeff, he had done the first one.
Jeff Lane owns the Lane Museum, which is the definitive museum for this kind of car in Nashville, Tennessee, and a must-see museum.
And a great guy, great collection.
Yeah.
But when I asked Jeff about it, he smiled and he said, well, it was a lot of driving. And I thought, you know, I know how subtle Jeff is. I should have listened to him. It was insane. But we had a really, there was something about getting to Brescia and standing in that square where they start the Mille Miglia that you were like, yes,
Nice.
The power of the 2CV.
Yeah.
But this has an early motor in it. This has a smaller motor than, this is a 425 cc.
I couldn't imagine doing that rally through the mountains. I could imagine doing it, but I'm not sure I could imagine doing it in this.
It was a challenge.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that pretty much, that's it. Imagine that, we finally come to an end. And I have no room, so.
It's an amazing collection. You certainly have been a lot of fun. So let's go drive one of these cars.
All right.
In our next video, we're actually going to take a couple of these cars out and drive them. So please subscribe to our channel to make sure you get notified about that. And if you want to learn more about any of this stuff or see any of our project cars or news and events on this classic car world, check out our website, classicmotorsports.com.
Support brands that support classic motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. Visit crcindustries.com to learn more.